Welcome, one and all, to a little something I like to call filler. I'm currently working on a FNAF timeline that took 5,000 words to get to the first missing children's incident, and has taken almost further 5,000 to almost get through FNAF 2's sister location, FNAF 4, and almost to FNAF 1. It should really pick up pace soon. It's gonna be over 10,000 words. How long is it gonna take to record? Anyway, point is, for the time being, I'm just gonna do a smaller, quicker, hopefully it won't take ages to edit or render, so I can just kind of get it out the door video. And then I can mainly focus, on, not because I'm lazy, it's so that I can mainly focus on writing, editing, and taking weeks to render the FNAF video because DaVinci Resolve took 7 hours to render a 1 hour video. So this 10,000 plus word video that may very well end up happening is probably gonna be quite a few hours to edit, and then to render will probably be a few days. It's so tragic, but it's fine. But until then, I'm going to do what someone suggested and break down my 3.5 hour epic on every game after FNAF's The Ultimate Custom Night into smaller, more manageable theories. Because they're quicker to get out the door, I hope. I presume. I was hoping I would maybe get the timeline done this week. It is not gone that way, but that's because I'm adding a little something extra to it, just for a little. It'll be a surprise, let's put it that way. I hope people see it because there's so much work I'm going to put into it. This one is going to be. It was originally going to be Vanny and Vanessa not being the same person, but I mean, I have all this written down, so I might as well just use it. And this is me supporting the fact that Gregory is a robot, and Mike is probably Glamrock Freddy. Let's get Mike being Glamrock Freddy out of the way first, because that's less evidence, but also arguably more compelling evidence. And yes, I'm agreeing with MatPat. I'm standing against everyone else in the theory community, including quite possibly MatPat himself by this point, and possibly even Tom, and standing alone on the hill that he is a robot. Purely just there's too much evidence. There's way too much evidence. Anyway, first off, Michael being Glamrock Freddy. I mean, the most obvious thing is the "I am not me" speech. The "I found myself when I came down here, Gregory. Gregory, I am not me." I'm throwing in a few extra Gregorys in there, but that's basically the gist of it. I found myself when I first came down here. She brought me down. And you're in the FNAF 6 location. Like, that is, in my opinion, as explicit as it gets. Like, I found myself and I am not me is about as explicit as it gets. Glamrock Freddy is possessed by a soul from the FNAF 6 location. One of the souls. And it certainly isn't William. So it's probably not going to be one of the missing children instant kids. It's not Charlie because I don't see. Like, the animatronics are most likely sentient, and I don't see Charlie inciting violence. Like, Charlie is a protector, but I don't see it being Charlie. It certainly isn't going to be Elizabeth. So it's not going to be Crying Child. It's probably not going to be the one you should not have killed / Michael Brooks. Um, it so it's either Henry or it's Michael. Although I guess I feel like the evidence would suggest Michael more. Also, I will be referring to Crying Child as Cassidy Afton from now on, for the sake of giving him a name, and because I do think that is his name. My reasoning is different to dual process theories, but we get to the same conclusion, so it doesn't really matter. On to the second evidence point. These are evidence points that either I came up with myself, or for most of them, MatPat came up with them, and I wrote them down. Mainly so that I could read out all the ones for Gregory to be like, do you really not want to say he's a robot? Okay. Then there's Watch Freddy and Animatronic Freddy are different. This was, I remember, back when a lot of people agreed in Glam Mike, or at least like when I saw a lot of people agreeing in it. The fact that the Watch and animatronic versions of Freddy, who are both supposedly Freddy communicating with you, say different things, was theory that there were two souls, that both Henry and Michael were inside Glamrock Freddy. But I think what's more likely is, like, as I said, the animatronics are basically sentient, they're incredibly intelligent, incredibly advanced technology. It seems likely to me that what's really happening is, like, you do have two consciousnesses here, and one is Michael and one is Glamrock Freddy. And Michael, like, is a ghost, so he is taking over the systems and programs, but he can't incite violence against the animatronics directly. Like, there's still a certain amount of Freddy-ism that's getting put over what he wants to say. But such safeguards do not exist on the Watch, so Michael can just say what he really wants to say, which is destroy the animatronics. Where, meanwhile, like, Freddy cannot promote that, would be my assumption. But that would imply, again, that there's a soul communicating through the Watch in a way that's a bit more direct. Whereas in, like, Freddy is kind of like a filter that he's going through. Then there's just the FNAF 6 location is there. Michael is not seen in the FNAF 6 location. We don't even get to see his room. I mean, they could have, like, I don't know, a pile of dust, a few bits of metal. You could make. There's something you could have done. Or a pile of ash, I guess it would be. There's something you could have done to show that Michael was once there. A mask that's semi melted or something. Like, you could have. But we don't see him. And we see seemingly everyone else, possibly, in the form of the blob, possibly. Michael. Well, Freddy glitches out when he sees Gregory. Which, again, if Gregory is Cassidy, then there you go. His friends are maybe in the blob. This one's a bit of a stretch. It's a map at one here, and it's a little stretchy. But that basically, if Freddy is, if like the soul inside of Freddy is taking over and saying, "I am not me," for him to say, "My friends are down here. They are lost and confused," it does seem to be more in, like, it's in line with both the Glamrocks and the Blob. But if this is the soul speaking, it's more likely to be the Blob. I just don't know if I would call the Blob, if it does have human souls inside of it, which probably doesn't. I don't know if I would refer to it as Michael's friends. So it probably is talking about the Connor's. He loves burning things down, except he may not, because technically the FNAF 3 like FNAF 6 just wasn't Michael straight up, and FNAF 3 was probably Charlie, because Charlie, what, like, if Michael's gonna burn the place down anyway, why not burn it down after day 2 or 3? Like, you could say, okay, day 2 he wasn't expecting an actual animatronic to show up, so of course he wouldn't have the stuff to burn the place down. But night 3 he has no excuse. Why wouldn't he burn it down? That just doesn't make sense. Unless the puppet burned it down, and the reason why, which would make sense, because in Ultimate Custom Night, again, if Michael is the vengeful spirit, like, they burn us. Like, no matter how many times they burn us. Michael and William have only been burned twice, both in FNAF 3 and FNAF 6. They're the only characters to be burned twice, notably. And they burn us would imply a third party of plural people burning them, and therefore Michael would not have caused the FNAF 3 fire, and the they would then be, the Emilys, Charlotte and Henry, right? Plus, it then makes sense why it would be after the week, right? Because throughout the games, Charlie is causing Happiest Day, right? In some way, shape, or form, Charlie is causing Happiest Day. So it makes sense, like, Charlie succeeds in causing Happiest Day and then burns the place down, which would then give a reason for the fire to be delayed. Whereas for Michael, why wouldn't he just set it off early? You know what I'm saying? Or it was an natural accident. Either way, him liking to burn things down, maybe not so much. But then, here's the real kicker. the replica of the sister location room, which Freddy can't come in. And obviously, it has the thematic ties of the way it brings the story together in full circle. But the big kicker, really, is the replica of the sister location room. Because for all the places the Pizzaplex may have been built on top of, Fredbear's, the FNAF 6 location, the FNAF 4 house, sister location bunker, for all the places it could have and probably was built on top of, Michael's house was not the FNAF 4 house, right? It was an apartment in an apartment block at the end of a street next to a bunch of houses where he was seemingly quite well liked, right? I mean, his neighbors wave to him and smile and they're all happy, so presumably Michael's house wouldn't be in the Pizzaplex. It wouldn't have been built over. It was in a different area. So for it to be in this location would imply that Michael is here, and it's got the Vanessa therapy tapes, and then it's got Fredbear and Friends, which doesn't really mean anything, but it's not what Michael's watching, which is wild that it has the Vanessa therapy tapes in actually. But the point is, it's here. Like, his room being here likely means he is here, right? Like, Michael Afton is here, is around, and Freddy can't come in there. I don't know. It feels likely. It feels likely. And then on to Gregory being a robot, and I'm just gonna list off all the evidence and then come back to him. When Vanessa is speaking to Freddy, she says that I believe in the Lost and Found scene, she says she's calling the police. No, she does say she's calling the police. And then she says that there's no record of Gregory.
This is not the night to be wasting my time. So, you are going to wait right there in Lost and Found until your parents or the police arrive. I found him earlier and locked him up in Lost and Found. He can't. Turns out there's no record of him.
Which would imply that she's not just talking about the Pizzaplex, but that she's talking about in general. Right there, there's no record of Gregory. They can't hand him back because it's in response to Freddy saying, "Oh, great, he can be returned to his parents," and she's like, "No, there's no record of him." So nope. It just means in general there is no government legal record of him. Then he's homeless, so he may be living in the Pizzaplex, which again would make sense for a robot kid. He stutters on his name, which could be memory issues, especially if he's a robot crying child. That chip has probably been removed and passed on, so he probably doesn't remember what he thought he was remembering. And so, in that case, he would struggle to remember his name and might just come up with one, because that's kind of how you might expect that to work. He obviously looks like Crying Child. There's the whole "you are broken" thing, which, linking it to "I will put you back together." You are broken. Put back together could be literal. Like Freddy describes him as broken. There's obviously Chica saying that, your family is looking for you, let me take you to your parents, which could actually be literal with Burn Trap. It would also explain why Burn Trap, or Glitch Trap, I guess, takes him over, as opposed to killing him. If he's a random kid, why not just kill him? But if he's a robot person, and a robot recreation of your son or yourself, it wouldn't make sense to kill him. It would make sense to use him as a puppet, right? Robot children, obviously in the books, very common. His vision glitches, and you may be saying, like, well, she becomes invisible to the robots, so wouldn't Gregory just not be able to see her? But no, he was likely built in the 80s, maybe 90s, but probably 80s. So meanwhile, this game takes place late 2020s, early 2030s. It's somewhere in that range. So you're talking about a technology gap of, like, what, 40 years? No, well over 40 years. You're talking about like 30, 40 years. So it does make sense that something that makes her invisible to modern cameras may interact with his cameras differently and just cause them to go on the fritz, as opposed to being normal but just not seeing her, right? Freddy seeing saying, "You look different to me." It's a weird moment. It's a weird thing to call out. He doesn't say this about anything else, so it would suggest that there is something notable about Gregory that he is seeing now, but not enough for him to be like, "I'm seeing your skeleton now." It's something that's noticeable, very noticeable, enough to comment on compared to everything else he's looking at, which he can also see through, or at least has X-ray eyes through or whatever. But also not enough for him to directly call out, or is secret enough for him to call out for whatever reason, or not to call out, not to tell Gregory for some reason. Well, if he's a robot, it would probably fit all of those criteria. And plus, we know he can see Vanny with Roxy's eyes. So, if he can see Vanny, that means he can probably see through whatever illusion disc technology she was using to make herself invisible. So, if so facto, Gregory is using an illusion disc. If he's a robot, he's seeing through the illusion, right? So he's seeing whatever is Gregory, truly. There's Gregory surviving inside the charging stations right next to his endoskeleton. That doesn't quite feel like that's how that would work. Yeah, there are broken robots all over the place who Gregory may have been taking parts from. Obviously, there's the Glam Mike connection. If Freddy glitches out when he sees Gregory and Freddy is Michael, then that's a pretty major connection. And then the therapists are killed by machines. And we do see a newspaper for local missing residents, so they could have been murdered by the animatronics, or they could have been murdered by Gregory, who, would be a machine. Because the therapists themselves. One, when Vanessa says she's got a new job, the therapist the therapist is like, "You've got a new job, I'll be sad to see you go." Maybe that's because she's got a new job and doesn't have mandatory therapy sessions anymore. But it also kind of seems like it may be implying that the therapists don't live close enough to the Pizzaplex. But then they also don't live so far away that they're questioning patient 46 being there, so it's hard to say, really, where exactly they live in relation. But we do know one of the therapists was found dead, mangled by machinery, which doesn't quite line up with 8 missing residents, one of whom is Gregory, which again wouldn't really make. It would imply that the therapist deaths are in some way different to the deaths of the local missing residents who we see in the newspaper. That maybe they're a bit further away, and you may be wondering, how would Gregory get to the therapists and back? Well, again, it's clearly not so far away they'd question that, but also, Ruin did technically introduce us to the idea that Vanny masks can teleport people, so teleportation kind of would be the explanation for that one. And the therapists don't question it, so maybe teleportation technology is just a thing at this point. Who's to say, really? They've got sentient robots. Opening portals through space and time? Why not? Well, space. Time is off the table, maybe. With Into the Pit coming out, I guess it isn't actually. But yeah, the point is that the therapists seem to be a different slate of deaths to the local missing residents who we see in the newspaper. They're not called kids, so they probably do include adults. But if one of them was found dead, mangled by machinery, that means she wasn't killed in the way the other local missing residents are, where they're missing. Therefore, she probably wasn't killed by the Pizzaplex animatronics or Vanny like the others were. Therefore, for her to be mangled by machinery, patient 46 would have to either be machinery or have access to machinery without the Pizzaplex. So Gregory is machinery, is kind of the takeaway for that. Then obviously he's biting Freddy in the parallel to the Bite 83, biting the Freddy headed ice cream, all that. There's the Afton family table next to the note room, and just the note room in general. You've got notes of starting binary, and then go to broken speech, and then go to real speech. You've got drawings of things like a bear face and a birthday party, and all things you would associate with crying child, all in Cassidy, all of that. So it seems evidence that there is a robot crying child running around somewhere. or it's a robot that believes it is crying child. That is having memory issues, as we mentioned earlier with Gregory and his name, that's slowly remembering some things but not all. And as it's doing that, it sets up the Afton family table, with all the members of the Afton family accounted for. That's interesting. And then obviously there's the good ending. The good Vanny ending, just generally a parallel to the Afton kids. And then maybe there's my theory that the current CEO of Fazbear's may be a robotic Cassidy, but like the adult version, which is possible, but like definitely not super supported by evidence. It's more of a hypothesis, more of an idea. And so that is the theory. With then the final, but there is one rub with this theory, and it's a doozy. Is Gregory actually patient 46? I mean, oh god, please don't be God. Because I mean, patient 46 has two major issues. One seems to be a kid because they say like that chair's too small for you, and they go out of their way to tell us that the therapists all work in one company. And then one of the therapists says she works from adults to young people, which we could assume is true of all the therapists. And there's a lot of like, do you need this word explained? Like general childish talking to someone as if they're a child. But then at some point they say like, you had a good childhood and you had normal parents, but if it was a child, wouldn't you still be talking to the parents? How did you not work this out? It kind of feels like the person would have to be a teenager, right? Like patient 46 has to be a teenager or maybe a tween. So like there's enough of an area between like we're not talking to your parents, we're just here with the school or whatever, and then also like we're talking about your childhood as a thing in the past, but you're still a kid and not an adult. Like somewhere in that range, you're looking at a very specific age range to make that work. And then also in the Italian, Japanese, Spanish, and German translations of the game, Patient 46 is exclusively and specifically and consistently referred to in female words, which would imply Patient 46 is a girl. It doesn't even imply, it just confirms. So how's that one working? Well, I kind of can't look past the book. Like, the book makes it so obvious that Gregory is Patient 46. Like, it just bats it around your head. Like, it feels difficult to say he's not Patient 46, so how could he be a girl who may be older than Gregory currently is? Well, if he's a robot, and remember, he'd be possessed by Glitchtrap at this point, who is either Afton or Mimic or Cassidy. And so you've either got you've either got Afton, who would have built him and therefore would know full well that he has an illusion disc and voice box and would be able to manipulate those easily. You've got Mimic, who is already associated with shapeshifting and mimicking voices, and so if he's suddenly in a body that can do both, he's gonna do it. And then Cassidy, who was probably somewhat involved with Afton's experiments and research, and so may have enough knowledge of how illusion discs and voice boxes work to copy someone's appearance. Because, yeah, if he's a robot, he's going to have an illusion disc, so he's going to be able to change what he looks like. He'd also have a voice box, and we're told about we're shown in Security Breach when we give Freddy Chica's voice box, he's not suddenly talking in Chica's voice, he's talking in his own voice, which means that voice boxes can simply do any voice, and therefore Gregory would be able to use his voice box to sound like someone else. So between that and the illusion disc, he could easily turn into someone else, who he could have killed and replaced. That would even explain why patient 46 is in therapy in the first place. If your daughter suddenly starts acting completely differently, showing different skills, showing different interests, you're going to be concerned about this overnight change. And I don't know, maybe he also killed the parents, so they're not in the picture, and that's why they're talking about the parents as if the therapist isn't associated with them. I could see that. That would make a lot of sense to me. So, yeah, that's. Then I think that would be the reason why Gregory is a robot narratively, is because that's what he was doing. Because otherwise, it would be really weird for Patient 46 to be very clearly hinted at and to be Gregory in the books. It would be a really weird thing to explicitly state if it's just not true. And this is the only way it could really be true. It could also explain the difference in age, I suppose, if he'd be able to, look like anyone. So, yeah, I do think Gregory's a robot. I think there's enough to say Michael is in Glamrock Freddy, and I think that's all I've got for today. Thank you for watching.